I'd like to introduce Joseph Nicholson, who will be presenting Network Automation in Baby Steps. Joseph is a network operations engineer at NTT Data and traveled from Dallas, Texas to join us today. Hope it isn't too cold for you here. It's a little colder in Dallas. This is Joseph's first time presenting at NANOG, and it's a pleasure to have him speaking with us today. Welcome, Joseph.
Good morning. Actually, it's, I think, 80 degrees in Dallas today, so it's a bit cooler here, so I got to come cool down. Yes, my name is Joseph Nicholson. I'm an operations engineer with the Global IP Network division of NTT Data. If any of you are like me and you have a hard time keeping up with NTT name changes, I'll make it easy for you. My ASN is 2914. Sometimes I don't know who I work for anymore. All right, before we get going, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on myself. I started working for NTT as a network analyst in the NOC in 2007. I worked my way up through the NOC into NOC engineer before being hired into my current role in 20. My day-to-day focus is on network reliability and operational excellence. I specialize in automation of operation processes using Ansible and Python. Today I'm going to talk about my experience with learning to automate by using baby steps or iterating over the same project incrementally. As I moved into my current position, I wanted to learn how to access the routers programmatically. I also saw that we had a need for operational state data that was not being collected. Over time, we've had issues crop up across the network where questions like, has this affected anything else? Is this issue affecting anything else right now? And will this issue affect anything else in the future? Those questions were being asked quite a bit. And it seemed like we could answer some of those questions by just collecting a little bit more data than we had available to us. At the time, we had access to basic router stats, such as interface statistics, router CPU, memory usage information, and basic stats like that. Our stats team is pretty small. Sometimes getting new pollers up and going can take a while. So they have day-to-day needs they have to meet for themselves and for other groups. About 4 years ago, I creating some basic Python script to collect data, format it, and send it to our large data. We now have historical access to full route table counts from the routers, disk space, router config sizes, and more. For the first iteration, I found some basic information using netmiko and textfsm and started to experiment. Pretty quickly, I was able to put together a single script to pull just one data point off the route. Structure of the script, the Python script, was such that I could easily copy that script, update a few functions, such as the ones to handle the command I wanted to collect the data for, and the function to format that specific data, and send it to the textfsm part of this was a lot harder. Network to code repository did not have any of the data that I wanted, so I had to make brand new ones from scratch, not knowing anything about textfsm. I made a lot of template mistakes, and I had to fix times over the next couple of years. Is it cutting out? Okay. I thought it was just me. I couldn't tell, so. All right, where am I at? There I am. Okay. Can you hear me better now? Oh, yes, that is much better. Thank you. Templates occasionally broke after upgrades, for example, due to output changing in ways that were not immediately obvious. When using textfsm and netmiko collecting the data from the CLI, I got the output was exactly what I wanted because it's right there on the CLI. You can see what you want. You can see what you're collecting, and you can get back exactly what you expect. With netmiko and textfsm, the unstructured data was put into structured format as Python list of dictionaries. Then I used Confluent Kafka Python module to send the formatted data to the large data storage system. The stats, large data storage system that our stat system uses to pull from. Sorry, having a little bit trouble seeing. I was given access to the Druid database panel by our stats team, so I could iterate on that end a little bit faster. I didn't have to keep waiting for them to make changes for me and stuff. And then I was able to set up the pivot data cube in our testing system and iterate on that end as well. To run the scripts, I set them up under cron on a Linux server. After a little while, I had a handful of scripts running. They ran pretty good for some time, and then I started to find ways I could improve them, so I started working on version 2. As part of version 2, I had already started to advocate for more modern polling methods, such as using Netconf. This resulted in a project for me to build, test, and deploy Netconf configurations across all of the router platforms on our network. We have 3 router OS versions. We use iOS XR, Junos, and SROS. So this was quite a project to get them all deployed properly. After Netconf was deployed, I slowly updated my existing scripts to use Netconf as opposed to screen scraping. The data from Netconf is pre-structured, usually in the XML or JSON formats, and I no longer had to fight with poorly written templates. I also learned to use Python modules like Beautiful Soup to help narrow down large data sets into and convert them to easily usable dictionaries. There's still some issues with the data from time to time. While the network OS in most cases is the network is the same across multiple platforms from the same vendor, different development teams program for it, and sometimes the data doesn't always come out looking the way you expect it to. This generally, in my experience, has been inconsistent Yang models across router platforms. A large change in this version for the repository itself as a whole was using a CI/CD pipeline in GitLab to package everything for deployment to a Linux server. The pipeline creates a Debian package and uploads it to our internal package repository. And then the Puppet instance will come along and find a new version, deploy it, and then the next cron run, the new versions are running, and all my changes have been picked up. All right, get to version 3. We'll skip ahead a few years. Version 2 worked really good. I spent a lot of my time in the interim not working on this, but learning how to automate operational processes using Ansible. And I got a little bit better as a programmer along the way. A personal friend of mine spent some time last year learning asynchronous programming in Python and wouldn't stop talking about it. So I went ahead and took the hint and decided to give it a shot and see how that went. I set up the scripts to poll asynchronously using the async IO module in Python, as opposed to polling a single router at a time, which I had been doing for the previous 3 years. This cut the full runtime for some of the scripts down quite a bit. For example, there's a script that will pull the Junos config database usage statistics. That would run across the network in about 6 or 7 minutes. The time to run with using asynchronous IO module is 22 seconds. So that's a huge jump or decrease in time to run. I tried to get threading and queuing to work in the past in Python, and if anybody in here has done that, you know that that is next to impossible. Async IO seems to be working really, really well for what I need. For this version, I did not make any changes to the method of polling. Netconf is working really great, and as of even up to today, it's my go-to protocol for working with our routers when possible. It's the first one I use. In this version, I made another repository-wide change. Something I'd wanted to do for some time but never got around to was modularizing the Python functions. A lot of the functions are just repeated throughout all the scripts, and I decided to go ahead and spend a little time and break those out into their own files and just import them as I needed. And that's cut down the code and into each individual script quite a bit and makes it a little bit easier to read. All right, now when we look at this holistically, you can tell I learned quite a bit over a period of time here. The main Python modules I learned are netmiko, textfsm, beautiful soup, Confluent Kafka, and async IO. There are many, many other ancillary modules that I learned along the way. They're also in use. And my hero right here. There are a lot of other ancillary modules I used along the way. They're also in use, but these are the main ones that were definitely helpful to me in getting this done. When it came to Netconf, I learned how to configure, deploy, and secure Netconf at the router level. I also learned how to use Python to access the routers using Netconf and collect data. This ended up enabling my later work with Ansible. If any of you use Ansible, Netconf is very, very integrated in there. So, large data storage system. In addition to learning how to send the data to the system, I learned how to do some minor administration of the Druid database and the pivot data cubes. In GitLab, I learned more about working with repositories and pipelines. I have a long way to go on this topic, but the jumpstart I got here helped me manage several other repositories and build more advanced pipelines for them as I needed. I already started working with Docker images in my Ansible work, but this time I had set up a, oh, sorry. I skipped a whole section of a slide. I learned how to store the, I set up a custom Python image and used by the pipeline to run the scripts. I also learned how to store the image in the GitLab container registry. I also started to learn necessary security practices in relation to the pipeline and the runners. They have access to the network and they need to be properly secured. Had I tried to implement all this from the start, I would probably still be working on it today. This is one project of 3 that collects data from the network for display in our stats system. I've also used what I've learned here for other projects, such as automating router upgrades and collecting data for vendors when TAC cases are opened. All right, so lessons learned. I learned quite a number of lessons along the way. I learned to start small and iterate. The baby steps approach shows that we can start with simple scripts to solve specific problems and incrementally build our knowledge and solutions, focusing on practical needs rather than over-engineering. This method allows us to build confidence and avoid being overwhelmed by complexity. I learned to understand the core tools and their capabilities. Python modules such as netmiko, textfsm, async IO, and Confluent Kafka are powerful tools for interacting with network devices and processing data. Netconf offers structured data formats such as XML and JSON that streamline data processing and reduce reliance on text parsing. By choosing the right tools for the job and investing in time and understanding their strengths and limitations, I'm better able to know what I need to get done, what I need to get a project done much faster. Don't be afraid to explore and experiment with tools that suit your network's requirements, and don't hesitate to learn new ones as needs evolve. I learned to overcome initial challenges with persistence. I faced a number of difficulties with textfsm templates and data inconsistencies across device modules, but refined my approach over time. Network automation involves trial and error. Be patient with initial setbacks and view them as learning opportunities. I find it helps to allocate time for experimentation and iteration when adopting new tools or methods. Next thing I learned was to prioritize structured data and avoid scraping where possible. I learned that transitioning from CLI scraping to structured data formats like Netconf saved me time and reduced errors. I recommend evaluating your network equipment's capabilities, implementing modern APIs or protocols for data collection. I know there are a lot of people in this room that are going to swear by scraping and textfsm templates. Simultaneously, I'm in awe of your ability to deal with those templates, and I think you're all just a little bit crazy. So, I learned from my failures and I adjusted. One example, this is the part I skipped, so I apologize. To make it quick and short, I tried to run my scripts in a pipeline in GitLab, and it did not go the way I expected it to. So that's where this comes from. One example is I reverted back to cron jobs when GitLab pipelines didn't meet my expectations. Not everything is going to succeed, except that you may need to pivot and return to previous methods when necessary. Treat setbacks as learning experiences and refine your approach based on results. Even though something you spent time learning and trying doesn't work out, it doesn't mean you can't use it again later. So that's not always wasted time. I learned to expand my knowledge beyond programming. Learning some DruidDB, Druid database, Pivot data cubes, Docker, GitLab pipelines, that enhanced my automation ecosystem. Don't be afraid to explore the full ecosystem around network automation, from data collection to visualization and deployment. Even if you have teams to administer some of those systems, having a basic understanding of them can make working with those teams much easier for you and for them later on. It's really helpful to have an understanding of what that system is so you can explain to them what you need and what you're having issues with. Focus on long-term value. My automation projects improved network reliability, reduced manual effort, and provided insights to prevent future issues. Automation is an investment in operational excellence and network reliability. I recommend identifying areas where automation can bring long-term benefits and prioritize them in your projects. This slide originally had a smart-sounding quote that I heard at someone else use in another presentation in another conference a few months ago. As I was writing this, I realized I'm not really the type of person to run around quoting other people. So in closing, I will say that the journey to integrate programming and automation into network operations is challenging, but immensely rewarding. By starting small, experimenting, and gradually expanding your toolkit, you can transform operational processes and enhance network reliability. By embracing programming as a core skill for modern network engineering, leveraging tools, frameworks, and best practices, we can bridge the gap between traditional networking and software-driven automation. Any questions?
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, one question. Mencken Davidson, soon to be unaffiliated. I was wondering if you could clarify, when you were speaking briefly about your embracing of Python's async IO and AIO HTTP. I was curious, you had mentioned that you got some real benefits in I think you said in a script that was collecting multiple devices configurations, and I was curious, were you pulling those configurations directly from individual devices, or was it a single back-end configuration management database?
So I was not collecting the configurations, I was collecting
Data.
the stats for the configuration database itself. Every Juniper router, Junos has a configuration database, and I was collecting the stats of how much space there is, how much is in use, how much is available. And so I was collecting those off of each router individually.
Appreciate that. And the reason I'd asked was I was kind of missed a bit of the audio, but I was curious if you were using the async IO library's two-thread method, or how it was that you were able to get that level of benefit making connections to all those different devices, since it has to be a different session, and I was curious.
Yeah, I don't, two-thread, I don't believe so. I'm using the await function, though. I still don't always, I just did this like 5 or 6 months ago. I'm still not 100% with async IO. I got it to work, and I was like, oh my God, I don't want to touch it because it's going to break now. Because that's exactly how it happens, right? So I got it to work, and I was able to replicate it across a couple of scripts. I'm still not necessarily sure I understand how it's working. But my previous work a couple of years ago spent like a week beating my head against a wall trying to get threading and queuing to work in Python, and that was not happening ever. So
It sounds like we've got oars in the same rowboat.
yeah, but I can, if you want to get with me afterwards,
Very
we
much
can
so,
sit down and talk about it and look at some code and stuff like that too. So
yeah, I'll find you.
yeah,
Thank you.
sure, excellent.
Thanks. Mr. Voidy, anybody online? Next, please.
Hey, my name is Brett from Comporium. So what did you use for a source of truth to automate against?
Oh, yeah. I love that word, source of truth. So at the beginning, I specifically said I'm working on operational automation of operational processes. We have a whole team, tools team that's automation. They're all about configuration management and other automation work. They built and maintained a custom configuration system over the last 20 years. All of the configurations have been automatically generated and pushed and built and pushed to the routers for the last 2 decades. So I'm working against that database that's been there since day one. So
Thank you.
yes.
Going once, going twice. Sold for the mere sum of your attendance at NANOG. Thank you very much, sir.
I appreciate it.